Yeah. This is screen.
My screen is not visible.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, I could see, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. See, first let me discuss about the differences between the production mode domain and the development mode domain. Okay, the first difference would be, see, the production mode domain is actually Oracle has created these two different type of domains. I mean, it allows us to create any one of these domain actually. See, coming to production domain is used in the production environment where your application runs 24/7, 365 days. So, and it would be on the live, I mean, uh, the live applications actually. So, coming to the production domain features, see, production domain by default we use JRocket JDK. It's not a mandate thing, that's different actually. So the first thing would be, in production mode we have a lock and edit feature. In development mode, default recommended would be Sun Hotspot JDK and don't have the lock and edit. Okay, so now let me explain what is exactly the lock and edit. See, lock and edit is a feature that has been added in WebLogic to avoid the restarts when you do some configuration change. Normally, any application server or a web server, when there is a configuration change, okay, when there is a configuration change happen, the server has to be restarted. Then only the new changes will get affected, right? I think it's a common thing on all the servers, I mean on all the different technologies we use. Whenever there is a change in the configuration, so the servers has to be restarted, then only the configuration will be affected. So that is a normal process. But using the lock and edit, you can avoid those restarts. So which means you can avoid the outages in the production. So if you select the domain in the production, you can avoid the restarts by using the lock and edit. Okay. You know, right? Normally, whenever a server is started, first of all, it will read the configuration files, and once it read the configuration files, it will start the process on the basic on that configuration. Okay, based on that configuration. If there is any change in between, so the server will not get to know that because it's already running. And if there is any configuration change, it will not load the new configuration. You need to restart the server, then it will load the new configuration. So that is why we need to restart the server whenever there is any configuration change. But in WebLogic, in the production domain, using lock and edit, you can avoid most of the configuration changes restarts. So if you change the port number of a server, no need to restart the server. Still, using the lock and edit, change the port number and the server can be still, it will load the new configuration without any issues. So this is called lock and edit, and it is very useful in the production boxes, because production boxes, if you restart the server, it will take 20 to 30 minutes. So that is an outage for you, right? So that can be avoided using this lock and edit. And one more important thing here is lock and edit cannot avoid all the restarts. So it is useful only for some extent. So there are certain changes which definitely needs a restart. For an example, if you change the IP address of a server, so the server needs to start with a new IP address. So in those cases, the lock and edit feature, even if you do the configuration change and activate the changes using lock and edit, it will ask you to restart, because this change definitely needs, it's a mandate to restart the server. Then lock and edit is not useful in those scenarios. But for the regular or small configuration changes, you don't need to restart the server. Your lock and edit can do it for you. Okay, so that is about the lock and edit. And coming to the differences between the JRocket JDK and Sun Hotspot JDK. See, JRocket JDK, in JRocket JDK, if the JVM process is started using the JRocket JDK, the application code, right, suppose the abc.com or abc.jar file or whatever it is. So that is the application code. So whenever a customer is hitting for the first page, okay, the first page, first JSP page or something, in the hotspot, what happens if the customer is requesting for a page or for a Java class or something? So the JRocket, the Sun Hotspot JDK will compile the code and it will change into the class file, you know, right? I mean, it will compile the code first and then it will execute. So it will compile the code and the code will become submission code and then it will execute that code, right? So in JRocket, it will compile the code and it will execute. The same thing what is happening on the Sun JDK, the same thing will happen in the JRocket also. But once the conversion is happened, JRocket JDK stores that mission code. So whenever the customer comes back with the same page or a new customer is requesting for the same page, it will not do that conversion again. Instead, it will use already the converted code which is stored in its data, I mean memory. It will use the same code and it will execute. So it will directly execute. The compilation will not happen here. So compilation is a one-time task for JRocket JDK, but in Sun Hotspot, the compilation will happen every time. So you request the same page 1,000 times the conversion will happen. But in JRocket, it will happen only for the first time, and the rest of the 999 times, it uses the same converted code and it executes. Okay, so that is the use of the JRocket. Now, when you are running the application in the production environment, there will be no code changes, right? There will be no code changes. The application will be running in its final state. So it is thoroughly checked and thoroughly tested, and it is have been tested completely on all the test environments, pre-productions, and then it will come to production. So there will be no change of the code. Okay, until a new release comes, until a new code comes, there will be no change in the current code. What happens? The code will be, once it is executed, I mean compiled, the code will come, right? The mission code. It is executed again and again for the other users. As there is no change in the code, it will not have no impact. I mean the code level. So the customers can access the applications much faster compared to that Sun Hotspot. But when you are working in the development environment, you will have code changes very frequently, right? So you will change the code of first page, second page. In this way, you will be changing the code all the time. So if JRocket is used here, so once the code is, once it executes that first page code or something, so it will store it in the memory, and next time also when you refresh the page, it will show you the old code itself, the old executed machine code only. So the new changes will not, it will not show the new changes. Then you need to restart the server. Then again it will compile. So then only you can see the changes. So but when you use the Sun Hotspot every time it will compile, right? So that's why if there is any code changes, it will compile again and it will execute the new code. So that's why the changes will reflect immediately. If there is any color change you do in the Sun Hotspot, I mean using the Sun Hotspot, what happens? Just refresh the page, you can see the change in the color. If you added some text, so refresh the page, you could see the text. So in this way, Sun Hotspot is useful in the development, and JRocket is useful in the production. Okay. And you will not have no auto deploy. auto deploy, fast swap, on demand. See, in the development environment, you have three more variety of deployments called as auto deployment, fast swap deployment, and on-demand deployment. So these things are not they are not useful in the production environment. So auto deployment is something like if you just place your deployment file in a directory called auto deploy directory, it will automatically gets deployed into your admin server. Okay, so it is useful for the development environment because you don't need to start the manager server, deploy the application, test it. This will take some manual effort and it will take some time. But if you simply deploy it using the auto deploy way, that means you just simply place your application on the auto deploy directory, the admin server will deploy the application immediately. So that will save a lot of your time, right? But in production it is not useful because you don't deploy the application on auto admin server in the production boxes because the load will be very huge. But in the development environment there will be no load, right? Only one or two requests coming in for the admin server. That is also of the internal employees. So you don't need to worry about the load on the development environment. So these things we see more, I'll explain more of these fast swap deployment, on-demand deployment during the deployment class. So on-demand deployment is something like WebLogic itself have some internal applications, just like your admin console. Yesterday I showed you, right, the admin console. The admin console is an application that is used to interact with your system administrators, right? So we can interact with your admin server to manage the WebLogic domain using the admin console. So admin console is an internal application. So whenever the admin server is started, this admin console application is also loaded. Okay, you can see it in the logs. It is loaded. And that's why whenever you type localhost and admin server port number /console, it is popping out the console application. But when you go for development environment, you don't do the configuration changes frequently. You don't create manager servers, you don't change the port numbers and all these things, you don't do it on a regular basis. So that's why there is an on-demand deployment in the development environment. So whenever you request for the admin console, then only the admin console application is deployed into the admin server. So during the startup of the admin server, the application, the internal applications are not deployed. Only when you request for that application, then only it will be deployed into the admin server. So the usage of this would be, the startup time would be very fast. The servers that are in the development mode will start very quickly when compared to the servers that are in the production mode. Okay. Any doubts so far, guys?
Yeah, the question I have is on JDK and Hotspot. Are they tools or what are they? What do they use them for?
I mean, the difference between JRocket and Sun Hotspot, right?
Yeah, the Hotspot. What is the usage? Is it for tools that the WebLogic uses or what?
Okay. See, when you run the WebLogic in JRocket, see, WebLogic itself is a Java program, first thing. Okay, the WebLogic server itself is a Java program. So it's a Java program that is, it's a Java class file actually. It executes like a JVM with a dedicated amount of RAM. It is a multi-process threads actually, it's a multi-threaded process simply. What exactly it is means, it is a WebLogic, whenever you start a WebLogic, it executes WebLogic.server class file. Okay, it executes like a WebLogic.server class file. It will take some memory from the RAM as the heap and it runs like an individual JVM process with a process ID. And whenever you request for some that JVM process for a page or for a request, it will handle that request and it will serve you back. So that is a WebLogic server. Okay. So when you use a JRocket JDK or Sun Hotspot JDK,
this WebLogic server runs the JVM process in JRocket or Sun Hotspot. So if you are using JRocket, the JVM process will start like a JRocket JVM process. If you use Sun Hotspot, it will run like a Sun Hotspot JVM process. And the difference I already explained you. When it runs like a JVM Sun Hotspot process, so it will compile the code every time. Instead, when it runs like a JVM process of JRocket, it compiles once and it will use the same code for the other time the executions. Okay, clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other doubts, guys? Madhu or Mujamil? So far?
Which one is more secure?
Can I explain the JVM because?
Right.
Can I explain the JVM process because I get confused? It's a daemon. It runs as a daemon or an application.
Okay, so you guys don't have the knowledge on the JVM and JDKs, right? Okay. Yeah, not an issue. See, actually, a JVM is like a Java virtual machine process. Okay, so it is like, it runs like a what you call it, it runs like a process or it runs like a job. Okay, so simply whenever you know Java is portable, right?
Yes.
So what is portable means?
It can run in any OS, any environment.
So how it is happening? So simply whenever if there is any Java code, some sample.java, okay, so this code I have written it once, I can use it as many times I want. So I can use the same code again and again and again. So it's it doesn't need any changes. I mean, every time you can run the same code, and you can run it on any environment like Windows, Linux. You can develop a Java code on Windows and you can use the same Java code on the Linux, and you can use the same Java code on the Mac, and you can use the same Java code on the Solaris. So there is no platform dependent. Okay, so how it is happening? See, we have a thing called a JRE, that is Java Runtime Environment. Okay, and the second thing would be JVM, and then the JDK. Okay, so first let me explain about the JDK. JDK, so first JRE. JRE is the Java Runtime Environment. So when you have a JRE installed in your operating system like Windows, Solaris, Linux, when you have the JRE installed, it supports Java applications to execute in that operating system. So whenever you run your Java application where a JRE is existing, the Java applications will run. Okay, if you don't have a JRE in your operating system, you cannot run the Java application. Though Java is a portable application, you cannot execute the Java code in your operating system until you have a JRE. That is, you need a runtime environment, then only your Java applications can execute. Okay, but so that is about the JRE. And coming to the JDK, Java Development Kit is the complete kit of your Java. If you just install JRE, you can only execute the Java programs on your operating system, but you cannot develop a code. You can just use the executed code, I mean already written code, and you can execute it because you have the runtime environment. But coming to JDK, JDK is a complete kit where you can develop your Java application. So you can write your own Java application, you can compile the Java code, and you can execute the Java code. You can do everything when you have a JDK installed on your operating system. So that's why we always install a JDK, so you have all the complete kit of your Java, so it can run, it can modify, it can create a new code, and everything can be done when you have a JDK installed on your operating system. Okay, coming to the JVM. See, JVM is a process which converts your Java code into OS specified code. Okay, so when I have a Java code sample.java, it is running in the Windows, so Windows should understand the Java code. So JVM actually converts that Java code into the class file which can be understandable by the Windows machine. Okay, and when you run the same code on a Linux environment, there will be one more JVM
which converts this Java code into Linux specified code. Okay, simply JVM is a mediator, okay, which actually one of the tasks of the JVM is the conversion. So it will convert the Java code into your operating system specified code. So if it is Windows, it will convert into Windows understandable language. If it is Linux, it will convert into the Linux understandable language. Okay, so for a practical example, if your operating system is like English and your Java code is like French, so your JVM actually is the converter of the Spanish to English, and French to English and English to French. So when you have a JVM, your Java code can be executed and it can be understandable by the operating system. Okay, so that is about one of the tasks of the JVM. Okay, and the other task of the JVM would be, see, JVM while executing the Java code, so there is a Java code I have executed like A equal to 1, B equal to 2 and C equal to A plus B, print C. It's a simple looking code, right? So here it needs to give some memory to A. It needs to give some memory to B to store that 1 and 2 values. And C has to be created and C also has to give some memory. So that means during the application runtime, we need to give some memory for the variables in the code. So that also will be taken care by the JVM. Okay, so JVM is a process that executes your Java code, that compiles your Java code, and it actually helps you to run that Java code. Okay, so WebLogic itself is a Java program. So this JVM, this WebLogic code, when the WebLogic code is executed, it will run like an individual JVM. Okay, it will run with a process ID and it will run like a JVM process. Okay, it runs like a process. So whenever a request is application server, that is the JVM process is nothing but the application server for us. So when you hit that process, it will respond back to you with a response. So that is a WebLogic JVM process. Is that clear, Madhu?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is that clear, guys?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So any other questions on the differences here so far we have discussed? No, right?
Just one question. JVM is a sort of compiler, right?
Yeah, it will do the compilation also. See, there is a lot of tasks that a JVM perform. The compilation, the execution of the code, giving the memories, running the GC, and also doing the conversion. It's a process actually. Or it is a job or it is a program, whatever it is. For your understanding, you can understand that it is a process or a program or it is a job. Or even we can call it as an application also. It will start like an application. Okay? Okay, any other doubts so far what we have discussed? Okay. So the other important thing, the other important difference would be, see, you don't, when your servers are running in production, you need to give admin credentials to start and stop the servers. Okay, so you need to give the admin credentials while starting the or stopping the WebLogic servers. So yesterday itself I tried starting the admin server, but it asked for my username and password, right? But when coming to the development environment,
You need to use admin, right? Server.
I didn't get you.
You say you need to use admin credential, right?
Yeah, credentials in the sense username and password. The admin in the sense, so
Okay.
whenever you're creating the domain, you have
Okay.
you created username and password, right? You need to give those details while starting the server in the production environment. Because production boxes should have some security, that's why to start and stop the servers, you need to give the credentials. Then only it will validate that credentials, and then only it will, I mean, the username and password you need to give, and it will validate that username and password. If you are a valid user, then only it will allow you to start the or stop the server in production. But in development environment, you can simply start and stop your servers. No need of authentication in development environment, because you know development environment is accessible only for your internal employees. But production servers, they will have some impact. So if you stop certain service or a server, it will impact the end users. So that's why we don't allow without authentication. You cannot start and stop your servers in the production. Okay. So clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me show that. So first let me start the production server. I will just show you these differences, whatever we have discussed. So I will just try to show most of them. Go to your Oracle, middleware, user projects, domains. So here, this is the production domain. So start WebLogic. I think this domain is already existing one. So we have created one more WebLogic on a D drive, right, yesterday. One second. User projects, domains. So this is the production domain. So while you start the admin server from the, while you start the server from the using the script, you could see here the arguments are like, so what is this is the minimum size of the heap. What is the minimum size here? 512 MB. And XMX refers to the maximum size of the heap. So that means this WebLogic server process has taken 512 MB of the RAM initially, and it can go up to the max level of 512 again. This is the production box, production server, production mode domain server. Okay. So we have started that. See, the recommended settings would be, by default, I'll explain it. Wait for a moment. Let the server get started. I'll explain these things. Okay.
Yeah, I need to interrupt your class.
Mm-hmm.
What did they say?
You could see here it is asked for a username and password. Clear? So it is asking for your username and password. So here you could see the memory arguments here. So the minimum size is 512 MB and the maximum size is again 512 MB. It is running in the production mode. Now I'm just not starting it for time being. I'm going back and I'm starting the development mode server. So it will not ask for any authentication. It will directly go to start the server. So you could see the authentication is not done. It already went to starting and standby. Okay. So go back here. You could see what is the, see it is already running now. The domain is running. The admin server is running. It is not asked for any authentication. And see the sizes here, it is 256 as the minimum and 512 as the maximum. Okay, the server is running in the development. Okay, so here the one more difference we observe is, see in development environment, the default, by default, the minimum size would be 256, and max would be, this is the heap values, okay, 512. Okay, that means the JVM process runs with 256 MB at the beginning. So it will take 256 MB of the RAM and it starts working. So after certain time, if it needs more memory, it will go back to the RAM and it will ask for the memory and it loads that extra memory. In this way, it can go up to 512 MB. So once it reaches 512 MB, as per this configuration, what I'm showing on the notepad. So after reaching 512 MB, what happens? So if it requires more memory, it cannot go back and ask the RAM. Though RAM has a memory, it cannot go back and ask because we have limited the process to work on 512 MB. Okay. So what happens if it reaches 512 MB and it needs more memory? The server gets crashed. Right. So going to production environment, by default, the minimum size would be 512 MB and max would be 512 again. Okay, both minimum and maximum are same. So what happens now? So during the server startup itself, it will take all the 512 MB of the memory, and if it reaches the maximum level, it cannot go back and ask the RAM because it already reached 512 MB and it will get crashed. Okay. Okay. So the logic here would be, see, you understood the concept, right? So minimum memory is something like during the startup, after the server getting started, it will take this memory from the RAM and it gets started. So the development environment server will start with 256 MB, but the production environment here is starting with 512 MB. Okay, so the difference would be when you give lower value as the minimum size, during the startup, the server will take only that less amount of RAM from the less amount of memory from the RAM, and it starts quickly. It doesn't need more time to load because 256 is very easy to load when compared to 512 MB of memory. So it will load the 256 MB of memory and it will get started. It starts very fast. But in the production environment, we have given 512 MB as the minimum. So it will take some time to load the memory and then start. Suppose it takes 3 seconds to load 256, means your development server will take 3 seconds to load the memory and it gets started. But compared to the production environment, it is 512, right? So it will take 6 seconds to load and start. So comparatively, it is very slow during the startup. But in production environment, you don't do the restarts again and again because one restart is equal to your outage. So you don't restart the servers. So that's why it is better to give the maximum value and minimum value as the same. So during the startup itself, the server will load all the memory, though the server startup time is slow, but while the server is running, it will not go back for the RAM and it will ask for the extra memory. In development environment, what is happening? You have given 256. After it is reaching 256, it needs more memory. Then it will go back to the RAM and it will ask the RAM for memory and it will load at that point of time. So what happens? The user who is trying to access the application needs to wait because it needs to go back to the RAM and it needs to load the memory. Then only it can serve the customer. So there is a delay. But if you give both these values as same, it will load everything during the startup itself. So whenever the customer comes, it can serve the customer effectively. There will be no wait time for the memory loading. Okay, so that is why we give both the values as same in production and we give less value in development, because you always restart the servers in the development because you will be changing the code or configuration or one or the other. So it needs restart. So that's why you just give less value in the development environment. And the recommended settings. So what is the minimum size we should give and what is the maximum size we should give? See, the minimum would be, you normally use at least 756 MB of RAM for your WebLogic server if it is running with a very small application. Okay, but the recommended setting would be around 1.2 gigs to 1.8 gigs based on your application load. So this memory completely depends on your application. So how much load is there on your application, how many users are accessing your application, what is the size of your application. So calculating all these things, we should come to a conclusion. So what should be my memory size of, the heap size of my server. Okay, but Oracle recommends you not to go beyond 1.8 gigs. So if you go beyond 1.8 gigs, your garbage collection will be slowed down. So we will discuss all these things in the performance tuning classes. So for time being, remember that the XMS is the minimum size that we give for the WebLogic server to start up during the startup, and XMX is the maximum value it can reach. Okay, any doubts here, guys? Any doubts? Okay, fine. So we have started the development environment server here. You could see.
Just one question.
Yeah.
One question. This memory is a virtual memory, right? Which is allocated in a heap.
Yeah, exactly. Virtual memory in the sense it will take from the RAM and it will start up and it will load. So once the process is killed, again this memory is given back to the RAM. Okay. So your domain is running in the development now. So let me start the console. So for development server, we have given the port as 8001 development mode domain. You could see here the application is not deployed yet, the console application. It is now deployed. This is called as on-demand deployment. You could see here on-demand deployment. So only when you request for that application, then only this application is deployed, the internal application. Okay, Madhu's question would be, you have 8 GB RAM your production server, okay, can I run 16 JVMs? See, you have 8 GB RAM and you can run 16 JVMs with 500 MB of RAM. You can run it, but 500 into 16 comes to 8 GB. So what you will give for the other system process? So you are eating up your complete RAM for WebLogic only now. So what about the other operating system requirements? There will be a lot of requirements, right? So if you could see the RAM here. So how much is it is? It is a 8 GB RAM for me. It's already consumed 3.6. How many servers I'm running WebLogic servers? See, Chrome is taking some memory, and you could see Apache is taking some memory. Chrome is eating up some memory, and this is my WebLogic. So WebLogic is already consuming 200 MB really. So what happens? So it's already 3 GB has been consumed, but I have run only 500 MB server, only one server. So because you need to give some memory for your other system process also. Okay. So you when you have an 8 GB RAM and you want each WebLogic server to run with 500 MB, max you can run up to 14 servers. 1 GB has to be given for the other system process. Don't occupy that 1 GB also. Then your computer itself gets crashed. Clear, Madhu? Madhu, you there? You there, Madhu? Hello. Yeah, fine. I think he's in mute. Okay. So you can run only up to 14 JVMs here in your case, because you can't consume the complete memory for your WebLogic only. If you give 16, at one point of time your computer gets crashed. Okay.
next. So this is called as on-demand deployment, and you could see here the server is running in the development mode. So that's it, guys, for today's session. I will come back tomorrow. We will discuss more on these domains, and I will just show you that both the consoles, and we will do the next practical session on the creation of manager servers and other things. Okay, any doubts so far in the SOFA session? Any doubts, guys? Okay, thank you, thanks for your time. Let's